The views and opinions expressed on this program are not those of Norfolk State University or WNSB-FM. Thank you for listening.
It's Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
March is Women's History Month, a time to celebrate women and all of our accomplishments. This year's theme is Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. Hi, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and all this month on Hampton Roads Voices, we talk about different topics of interest and importance to women. This week, we're going to look at the skin I'm in, Black women and skin color. Is skin color still an issue in 2019? What is the history over the treatment of people based on their skin color? And what are your experiences as a dark or light-skinned person? Today, we'll talk to a group of women and hear their experiences, and we want to hear from you. Next on Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
It's Hampton Roads Voices on Hot 91.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and today on Hampton Roads Voices, we're talking about the skin I'm in, Black women and skin color. And today, of course, is International Women's Day, and we celebrate that every March 8th. And so, of course, this topic really does fit with what we're doing and the theme, and we'll be talking about women's issues all through the month of March. So we have guests today. Our first guest in studio is Miss Linda Luter. She's a licensed professional counselor. Linda, thank you for being here today. We also have Miss Janine Kovney, and she is an entertainment journalist. Janine, thank you for being here today.
I'm so happy to be here. Shout out to Nikki Curry of Curry Media for having me here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Danielle Foskey, who is a licensed professional counselor. Danielle, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, ladies, we really want to have this conversation. It was so interesting. I was talking to a group of students. This is the genesis, really, of this topic. I was talking to a group of students, and 17, 18-year-olds and so forth. And the conversation came to color. And one of my students in particular, and I found this very interesting, he said that this was a young man, he had to walk through the world very differently as a dark-skinned person because he knew he was seen differently versus someone who might be light-skinned, as we call it, or fair-skinned. And I asked him and I said, in 2019, this is an issue. I know an issue in years past, but I was surprised that this was still an issue in 2019. And they said, absolutely, yes, the millennials said that. And so that really is the genesis of this topic today in this conversation. And we definitely want to hear from our listeners, 757-823-9110, 757-823-9110. Have you been treated differently because of the color of your skin? What are your experiences? And what have you viewed? How have you viewed being a different hue in your world? So we want to hear from you, 823-9110. So I first want to start with you, Linda, and just ask you to tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Yes. Hi. My name is Linda Luter. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am from the Hampton Roads area, and I have been in counseling now for probably more than about 20 years or so. I got my degree from Regent University, and I've worked with families, individuals. I guess I've done a little bit of everything at this point. Okay.
All right. Any particular emphasis that you have?
Like I said, I think my emphasis is mainly families, the developmental, children and young adults in the developmental stages, and then also couples.
Okay, excellent. And Janine, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Oh, I'm a writer, an editor, a blogger. I've worked at multiple magazines, including Billboard magazine, so I covered the music industry extensively. But one of my first jobs out of college was also a stint at Essence magazine.
Excellent.
So that was, a complete learning experience about how to cover us, by us, from a woman's and a Black woman's perspective, and that was completely eye-opening and valuable.
That is fabulous. I'm excited to hear about those experiences. And then we have Danielle Foskey. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Danielle.
I'm Danielle Foskey. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I, too, am a graduate of Regent University. I was a licensed school counselor with Chesapeake Public Schools for 13 years, but I'm now in private practice, and I specialize in adolescents and young adults, but I also do couple counseling.
Oh, excellent. All right. Well, we're getting callers already on the line, so let's just jump right into those phones. Again, the caller called at 757-823-9110. Caller, what is your name, please? You're live on the air, and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Tennille. I'm calling from Chesapeake.
Oh, and what is your name again, please?
Tennille.
Tennille, what is your question or comment, please?
So, I've had some very personal experiences with just the hue of my skin. I remember growing up and being in New Jersey. My half-sister is very, very light complected, very fair skinned, as well as my cousin, and having her mother, my aunt, tell me that I was too dark-skinned to hang out with them and that I should go stay in the house.
Wow.
And allow the pretty girls to go out. It was shocking. I was maybe 13 or 14 at the time to think that someone my own race identified me as less than because of the shade of my skin, not even my race, just my complexion. And I think, I heard you say that a young man was saying that he treads differently in life because of his complexion.
Right.
I think that's so true, and it's so unfortunate that, even us as a people don't embrace each other the way we should, because we get caught up on color or good hair or, just nonsense like that.
Wow. I heard that term, good hair, and I bet that most black people have heard the term good hair.
Good hair.
Yes. Tino, thank you so much for your call.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now, Linda, Tennille said something I found very interesting, and she said she was surprised that this type of attitude came from her own people. I think one of the myths is that we think it comes from people who don't look like us, people who are outside of our race and our ethnicity, but that is not true in the research that I've done.
Yes, that is true. Tennille made a very good point. And a lot of this goes back actually to the times of slavery. Mm-hmm. During those times, I think the mode of operation was conquer and divide. And that was a way, when you look at us as a people, there's so much diversity among us, especially in the skin color. And I think those who had us captive during those times used that as a means of causing division among us.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's absolutely right. And they call it colorism. It said it started, just as you said, in the roots of slavery, because the preferential treatment came from the light-skinned slaves. Now, notice we were all slaves, okay? Let's not forget that. We were all slaves, okay? Right. We were owned. We were property. And yet the fairer-skinned slaves, or the house Negro, we know those terms, they were given the better treatment as opposed to the field slaves, the darker ones. And so we see that. And then that transitioned and that continued in our own race, that we started to see the fairer-skinned people as the more beautiful and the darker-skinned as the less beautiful as well.
That's true.
And Janine, I'm curious, and then I'm going to come to you, Danielle. Janine, I'm curious in terms of when you said you were writing for Essence magazine, a magazine about us, for us, a woman's perspective. How did this type of thing, or did it ever come to play?
It's unfortunate that colorism does play, particularly within us, to us, among us. And that time at Essence was eye-opening because I was hired at a time when our editor-in-chief was not there. She did not approve my hiring. And I think she was on some sort of sabbatical. I'm talking about Susan Taylor. Mm-hmm. And when she came back and we met, she seemed to be taken aback by what I looked like.
Wow.
And so I felt that I always had to prove how black I am. How black are you? Did you grow up like this? Do you know these cultural touchstones? And so it was proving on both sides to white people that, I'm worthy of your esteem as a black person, and then being a very fair person to constantly have to prove, yes, I'm black, I'm down, I'm a sister. And,
Right.
it becomes painful. And also I grew up in a family where people were a range. We are whitest white to darkest brown in my immediate family. And I think that confuses people as well. But I wasn't brought up to feel any sort of prejudice for skin color. But I understand that some people in some families were. They were told what shade of skin to marry
Oh,
and
yes.
have children with.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's painful to me personally, because we're divided.
And we'll get to this a little bit later, the brown bag test. I remember I saw that once on Frank's Place. And I didn't at first know what they meant until, again, I started preparing for this show, and I thought they weren't kidding. I thought that was just something they had made up for the show, but that brown bag test is very real. We want to hear your experiences, 757-823-9110. What are your experiences as being a fair-skinned person? As you heard Janine say, you have to prove that you're acceptable to the whites or people of other colors. That you're black enough, you're down with it, and so forth. Give us your experiences, 757-823-9110. Now, Danielle, what is your experience in terms of being a dark-skinned woman?
I'm very fortunate that because of my upbringing, my parents did a very good job making me feel beautiful, helping to shape my self-esteem. However, as I really think back to my ideas about being dark-skinned, I have to be honest about something. When I was in high school, I remember being on the phone with a young gentleman who said, Danielle, you look good for a dark-skinned girl. Now, he was dark-skinned himself. And I remember laughing and saying, oh, thank you. But my mom said, Danielle, that is not a compliment.
Wow.
You are beautiful because you are beautiful. And that did not resonate with me until my mother said that.
Wow. Now, that is amazing, and that's been said over and over. Even though you are a dark-skinned person, even though you're still beautiful.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Again, it's an amazing kind of thing. So we're getting ready to take a break with our number, 757-823-9110. This is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
If you're just joining us, welcome to Hampton Roads Voices. I'm Benita Adams. And in lieu of Women's History Month, we're talking about issues that are very important to women. And today's topic is the skin I'm in, Black women and skin color. In studio, we have Miss Linda Luter, Miss Janine Coveney, and Danielle Foskey, Miss Danielle Foskey. We have a caller on the line. They called at 823-9110. Caller, you're live on the line. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Samantha. I'm calling from Norfolk.
Okay, Samantha, what is your question or comment?
My comment was in regards to the light skin and dark skin experiences that African Americans tend to have. I've had that all my life. I'm a little bit more fair-skinned. Never considered myself really lighter than most of my friends or my family members. But like many people, we have different shades in our families, but just constantly having to deal with the idea of having the good hair versus the bad texture of hair, and then being told that I speak white or I'm not black enough. So it's something that unfortunately I will be 39 this year, and what's so sad is that our young people are still dealing with these types of things now.
Yes.
And to know that my children will have to be dealing with those things, and that in one way we've come so far, but in other ways we still haven't as a community. So it's very sad that we're still divided when, especially these times today, we need to have a lot more unity within our community, and it's just sad that these things are still separating us.
That's right. It almost seems like we have so many things to deal with. Why do we still have to deal with this? We need to get past this. Samantha, thank you so much for your call. I appreciate it. We have another caller on the line. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Edward Foskey. I'm calling from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Oh, very good. Edward, what is your question or comment for our guest, please?
I'm Edward. Daniel, how you doing? I'm working with a couple of, I'm a videographer, and I'm working with some nonprofit organizations that deal with mental health and the stigma of depression. And one of the things we've talked about is how the church affects getting treatment and whether or not one should see a therapist, when you're talking about your own self-esteem, or whether or not God's going to heal, and finding that balance and the truth in the middle of it.
Absolutely. We've done a couple of shows on mental health and African Americans, and sometimes I agree with you, Edward. People say, well, just turn it over to Jesus and it'll be fine, and I believe in that. But sometimes you need Jesus and a counselor, and the mixture helps a lot. So I see your point. Thank you so much for calling.
Sure, you're welcome.
Okay. So, Linda, I'm going to ask you first about Edward's question, and then, Janine, I'm going to come back for Samantha's question for you. So, Linda, Edward says that, do we really need a counselor? And sometimes, especially in the black church and really in the black community, it's almost a stigma. It's a stigma to say, oh, no, I couldn't possibly tell anyone I go to a therapist or I need some extra help. What is your perspective on that, especially as it relates to our topic or anything that deals with something like this in terms of being a counselor?
Yes, Edward raised a great point. When we're in church, we tend to believe that Jesus is all we need. However, I'm not sure this topic is really something that's really discussed in church. A lot of times, if it is discussed, we might be told to, we're easily told, oh, well, that's not true, or to kind of stuff those feelings. But, even in scriptures, the Bible talks about that there's safety in counselors. It talks about bringing our faults bringing our faults to one another and really addressing those things.
Absolutely.
So sometimes we need, a little more outside help.
Have you found from your experience, and then Danielle, you jump in here too, in terms of being a counselor, that more African Americans are willing to seek professional help and perhaps even let others know that they're out there seeking that help?
A lot of times, and I'll give it over to Danielle too, a lot of times it seems like there still is stigma that I don't need to see a counselor because I'm crazy. And most of the time when people say that to me, I'm like, great, because I don't see crazy people. I see people that sometimes have adjustment issues and need to talk to a third party to kind of work through some of those things. Wow. What about you, Danielle? I'll
have to agree with Linda. What I am seeing is a rise in African American clients. Before, it was definitely taboo in our culture because, as Edward was saying, Jesus can fix it. And I do believe Jesus can fix it, but I do believe he calls counselors as well. Yes. What I have seen as a trend is when I work with clergy. Oftentimes, they do not want to be seen in the lobby. Oftentimes, they are very nervous about the confidentiality issues. When you come to a therapist, it's always confidential. But I do see that there is a stigma, especially in the church. When I speak with people who are in the church, I raise up Isaiah 61:1. It says, he has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness from the prisoners. That's what I'm called to do as a therapist. So I'm a Christian therapist. Right. So I feel like I feel like this is a calling on my life.
Right. And these kinds of issues that we're talking about, unfortunately, as you mentioned, Linda, that sometimes many times they're not addressed in the church, but they affect people's lives.
Most definitely.
And Janine, what Samantha said, it's kind of piggybacking off a little bit what you said when you worked at Essence. The good hair, I speak white. I can't even tell you how many times when I was younger that black people would say, how come you talk white? How come you talk white? And that still is going on. We hear that.
It is still going on, and I can identify with everything that the caller said, but there is something that it's called code switching.
Yes, it is.
And we know that when we're in the company of, the Caucasian persuasion, or if we're at a job situation, we tend to clean up our speech patterns. It's like you're speaking another language. When you're in that country, you speak that language. When you are with your people, then you can relax and speak. So you adjust your speech to the situation that you're in. And while that is a valuable skill, it's still unfortunate that we have to do that.
That's right.
And the other thing I want to speak to in terms of us, colorism within us, that we have to stop making assumptions about people based on what they look like.
Absolutely.
And, light-skinned people are looking at dark-skinned people and making assumptions, and vice versa, because I've had many people say, oh, I thought you were stuck up. I thought you were, that old-fashioned term, sedity.
Sedity.
Well,
Oh,
I can be a little sedity.
Okay, let's be real.
But I'm real, and you're real, and I want to accept people for who they are, the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And so we have to stop looking at each other and, oh, she thinks she's this because of her skin color. Oh, she must be ignorant because she's a certain skin color. We have to stop that. It separates us.
It absolutely does. Listen to this. As I was researching this, it says research has linked colorism to smaller incomes, lower marriage rates, longer prison terms, fewer job prospects for darker skinned people. And it has been that way in this country for many, many years. And also, ladies, listen to this. This is when we think, where does this stuff start? It's ingrained in our children. It says here, an old children's rhyme captures this definition of colorism. It says, if you're black, stay back. If you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're white, you're all right.
That's right.
I was thinking of that very phrase from my parents' generation because I used to hear that coming up. And my mother used to talk about paper bag parties even in Harlem during the 40s and 50s. So I was familiar with that term as well.
That's right.
And she would show up at a party with a group of friends and maybe only some of them could get in.
That is amazing.
So that's a terrible memory.
It
as
is.
well.
And so that's a kind of thing that starts with children and they grow into that. So we want to hear your experiences. Give us a call, 757-823-9110. How does your color affect your day to day? The practicality of it. Have you been in a situation where you felt you had to code switch and be one way or speak one way in front of this group and speak or act another way in front of another group? Give us your opinions on that. 757-823-9110. This is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Benita Adams, and we're talking today on Hampton Roads Voices about the skin I'm in, Black women and skin color. And our in-studio guests are Linda Luter, a licensed professional counselor. We have Miss Janine Coveney, who is an entertainment journalist. And we have Miss Danielle Foskey, who is also a licensed professional counselor. Now, ladies, we were talking about that code switching and going in and out and the need for counseling and so forth with our last caller, Edward. But let's move into a little bit about Black men and color in terms of beauty and dark-skinned women and light-skinned women. Linda, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, you are a counselor and you hear different stories and different experiences. But from your research, what have you found in terms of African-American men and how they see the fair-skinned, lighter-skinned Black woman versus the darker-skinned Black woman?
Well, I think it's what's also portrayed in the media. The fairer skins, it seems like the more Eurocentric you are, that's the definition of beauty. So a lot of times, from what I've seen, experience, and even among my friends, the light-skinned females may get more, they're considered the pretty ones. They may get more action. Men are drawn to you. They may like you, but you may be more in the friend zone. You may get stuck in the friend zone, but it just depends on the man.
That is so interesting. And Janine, it's so interesting. That's a wonderful segue because during the break, we were saying how we want to talk about this in terms of entertainment. And as an entertainment journalist, you have studied this, written about it, know about this. Tell Absolutely. Us how this notion of beauty, dark and light, even plays out in entertainment.
It totally plays out in entertainment because, whenever you're promoting a singer or an actress, but primarily I've been covering music, you see how much the singers are styled many times in a European fashion. I mean, not to take anything away from Beyonce and her talents, but she came from a girls group, Destiny's Child, and everyone automatically reacted to her singled her out. Yes, she was the lead singer, but she was the lead singer for a reason. And she is talented, but now everybody wants to look like Beyonce. And we have some beautiful singers. You have people like Lettucey, who is fantastic singer. She should be getting commercial contracts for cosmetics in the same way that Beyonce and Zendaya and those people are as well. So the media also tends to cast lighter-skinned women. There was a controversy a few years back where Zoe Saldana, who is a light-skinned, medium-skinned woman, who portrayed Nina Simone
She did, yes.
on film. And that, like, I can't even wrap my mind around that. I understand why she would want to do the project because she admires Nina Simone, but she was not the right person to take on that role. So you see it all of the time. And then just to relate back to dating, I'm single. I've dated men of all shades. But what's interesting is when you meet a man and he comes at me only because of what I look like. Wow. You're not interested in who I am, what I do. You're just looking for a trophy, as many men are. And that doesn't work. That's not real. And it's unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. And what are your experiences? And then, Danielle, I'm going to come to you. But your experiences in terms of our listeners, give us a call, 757-823-9110. Janine told us that sometimes men, they just based on what she looks like, not so much as who she is and so forth. What are your experiences in terms of dating, being dark-skinned or fair-skinned? And in terms of being an African-American man, tell us your perspective and your experiences as well. 823-9110. And it's so interesting, even historically in the movies, the darker characters were the mammy characters. They were not sexual. They were not sexual at all. They were not attractive at all. The men did not want them. But the lighter skinned ladies, they were the sexy ones. They were the beautiful ones. They were the desirable ones. And you could see how this plays out in almost every aspect of our lives. I was reading some information about bleaching creams. And it seems like this is impossible. People aren't bleaching their skin. Yes, they are still bleaching their skin in 2019. Danielle, what do you think in terms of, we were talking about either entertainment or in terms of black men? And I know we're generalizing, so, don't call and say, well, it's not me. And I understand that we are making some generalizations here, but nonetheless, Danielle, your perspective.
I have a personal perspective because of something that happened to me. I was married for 21 years. I remember having a conversation with my ex-husband and some of his colleagues. He was an executive for a local Fortune 500 company. We were having a discussion about colorism in the African American culture, talking about the light skinned versus dark skinned women. The majority of the men, it was about maybe 15 men, all couples, said that when you're dark skinned, you have to be thin, you have to be fit, you have to look a certain way. But a light-skinned woman could gain 100 pounds and still be considered sexy. That's what stands out to me. And I was like, really? And what they said, Danielle, think about it. They talked about Vesta Williams and how she was still beautiful. Jackie Harry. They said, name a large black woman who is beautiful, because when I think of a large, dark-skinned woman, it's Mamie.
Right.
Aunt Jemima.
That's Aunt Jemima. We've seen that all the time, unfortunately. So let's go to the phones. We have a couple of callers on the line. And when you call 823-9110, there are a lot of people are calling. So please, if you just hold on, we'll definitely get to you. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
Hi, good evening. My name is Terry, and I'm calling from Norfolk, Virginia. How are you ladies today?
We are fantastic. Terry, so good to hear from you. What is your question or comment?
My comment is, first of all, let me say thank you, ladies, for bringing it to the table. It is something that is so needed. I mean, if we can have this every week, it would be, phenomenal. I'm a dark-skinned black woman, and I've always dealt with color of my skin from junior high school. I had a white teacher told me I would never be anything. I would never amount to anything. So I've dealt with my skin color all my life, even though my family, we didn't deal with that. But I went to a mixed school, so I had to deal with that. And it's just sad that our people are so conditioned to this craziness about color. We're all one people. We come from a different shades of different colors. We have a language which we never was able to use. So we have the black language, quote unquote, and the white. We just speak correct English, but it just goes to show you that we had our own language. It was taken from us back, when we were brought over here against our will. But if our brothers and sisters will understand that we are the most phenomenal people on this planet, maybe we can get out of this condition and this foolishness of skin color. It's not about the skin color at all. We all are black. We all are beautiful people, no matter what shade we are, no matter what hair texture. I'm a hairstylist, so good hair is no such thing as good hair. Clean hair is good hair. Okay, we just have different textures. Right. And as far as the brothers dealing with our dark-skinned sisters, I started wearing a natural because of some health issues that I had went through last year. And I saw the difference when I had my hair straightened to now. Brothers don't even want to look at a sister that have a natural, and it's nice, it's neat, it's clean, it's pretty, and they just turn their heads. But when I slick it down and wear it, like a little straight, now everybody wants to say, hey, how you doing, sister? That is so crazy Isn't to me. Crazy? And because of the media has done so much damage to our people, especially our men. No, we don't have to look like that to be who we are.
Definitely.
We are beautiful.
Terry, thank you so much for
black
your call.
Women and men, come on, let's get it together and stop all this foolishness.
Terry, thank you so much for your call. We appreciate it.
Thank you for.
Okay, we have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
My name is Mo, and I'm calling from Norfolk.
And what is your question or comment, please?
My comment is about the colorism, between the light-skinned and the dark-skinned women. I grew up in the South, so in school, the guys always, favored the light-skinned women a little bit more, or young girls. So I felt the need to kind of dislike the light-skinned women because I seen that they were getting more attention. Now, I reflect on that when I became an adult, but it's sad to even admit that I, hated some that could have been friends just because they were getting more attention than I was receiving.
Definitely.
And I'm just trying to figure out, what is it? What is it? Why do the African American men or the black men feel like the light skinned women are more attractive?
Wow. We're going to put that to our guests. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so she said, both of our callers said quite a bit, but I'm going to start with our last caller, Janine. She's saying that, and that really is a little bit of what you said. She said that she saw that the lighter skinned girls were getting more attention and liked by the boys, so she decided to dislike them for that reason. Those are kinds of things that have been in our culture for so long.
For so long. And let me say this, that for a long time when I felt colorism or dislike from my darker sisters, I only looked at it from my perspective. How could you hate me? You don't know me. I didn't choose this color. Sometimes we walk around, we forget what we look like, but that's like white privilege. There is light privilege. Yes. I get to walk around and forget what I look like. I have to put myself in my darker skinned sisters' shoes to think about what it must feel like for them when people are constantly telling them that they're not beautiful, or disparaging them, or telling them they won't have the opportunities that they want in life for love or career. I don't know what that's like. So I have to be quiet and listen. But I do want to point to a documentary that came out in 2013.
Absolutely.
That was directed by Bill Duke, who's an actor, and a friend of mine, Dee Chanson Berry. It was a film called Dark Girls. I suggest that you look this up. This is very eye-opening. It talks about what women's experiences are in dark skin and what their life is like. I recommend it highly.
I love that you bring the point out. We've all talked about white privilege. White people walk through the world and forget about certain things because the world is at their feet. They own the world, not at their
Right.
feet. They own everything. And so they don't have to think about, I wonder what it's like to go into that restaurant and someone not to wait on you. I wonder what it's like to go into the store and people follow you around. But then you put that together with light privilege. And I have not heard that before. And that is a fascinating concept, that a person doesn't have to think about that. Think about the dark-skinned girl, because that's not your experience.
Right.
That is so
It's
interesting.
walking in the middle. It's in the middle. You know, white bias on one side and bias from your sisters on the other, and trying to balance that.
And trying to balance that. And Danielle, when you heard our last caller, when she was saying that she disliked, and when she was a younger girl, obviously not as an adult, the light-skinned girls, what would you say to something like that?
I don't really have that issue, and I really can't. I really can't speak on that as from my perspective. But I do understand how that could happen. I'm so glad that Janine talked about the light privilege, and I thank her for talking about standing in someone else's shoes. When I do think about the disparity already in the African American culture being in the media, I remember being a little girl not seeing anyone that looked like me.
Oh, definitely.
So even though my mom and dad did a great job making me feel beautiful, I did not know that other people saw me as beautiful, if that makes sense. Because what was beautiful was what was on television. And back then, models and the a small amount of actresses that we did see on TV were all light-skinned.
They were all light-skinned. I
Absolutely.
remember growing up, and my children are adults now, but I remember when they were younger, and I told them, I said, you just assumed that the blacks were on TV all the time. But when I was coming along, the newscasters, the sportscasters, weather people, none of them were black. And matter of fact, there were no women. It was white men that were on the news all the time. And then we had very few shows, especially when I was a little girl, very few shows that even had African Americans.
Absolutely.
And so when some of the shows started highlighting African Americans, it was a big deal. It really was a big deal. And so we can't take that for granted at all.
Right.
And Linda, when Terry called in, she talked about, she almost questioned, what is this? What is going on? Why has it been this way? And as the hairstylist, the good hair thing, and those kinds of things. What would you say to something like that?
Exactly. And the point that I was thinking about is the other side of that is that it's the stories we tell ourselves. And based on what we did see in the media, we didn't see a lot of a darker skinned African Americans. That was not the epitome of beauty. Then the things we told ourselves is that we weren't beautiful. If we weren't light skinned, we weren't beauty. And if you're telling yourself that you're not beautiful because you're not a certain skin tone, that's going to affect the way your behavior.
Oh, definitely.
So let's say in school or at the party, you're not going to feel as confident.
That's right.
And if you're at the party, you're kind of slouching, you're not confident. And then there's a young lady who is more confident, maybe because maybe she is light skinned based on what she's telling herself. Who is the guy going to go after? He's going to go after the more confident one, the person that's more comfortable in their skin.
Right.
So sometimes, it wasn't just they preferred that, it was about the energy that you were putting off.
Absolutely. And these are the things that we're talking about or asking our listeners. What are your experiences in terms of walking around and being confident in your own skin? And talking about walking around, if your hair was straightened at one time and you decided to go natural, tell us those experiences in terms of how you felt that you saw yourself and felt inside of yourself as well as others. Give us a call, 757-823-9110. This is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
If you're just joining us today, we have such an important topic. We're talking about the skin I'm in, black women and skin color. And we definitely want you to join our conversation today, 757-823-9110. And we're wrapping up our first hour, so I really want to ask each of our guests to give some final thoughts and so forth. So Janine, I'm going to start with you. Any final thoughts on this topic?
I can't believe that we're still talking about this in 2019.
Wow.
But here it is. We still have to deal with these issues. And it just has to do with our identity. Our identity has been, stolen and compromised in this country. Let's keep having the conversations about it. Let's keep reaching out to our sisters. Thank God we can look on a screen and see people like Lupita Nyong'o, who's so gorgeous, and Gabourey Sidibe, and Viola Davis, who's a monster at what she does, and so many. The beauty standards are changing, and so let's keep having the conversation. As for me, I'm a blogger. I write about movies, wordsonflix.com. Check me out. And I'm on Twitter at wordsonflix.
Thanks so much. And that, of course, is Miss Janine Coveney, entertainment journalist. Linda, last comments and thoughts.
Yes, I think the solution starts with us individually, what we tell ourselves, and it has to start with our children. It's the message that we're giving to our young daughters and our sons. That's where it has to start if we want to really make a change.
It really does. I agree with you.
Definitely. And I also can be reached on social media, on Facebook, Linda Luter LPC. I'm also on Psychology Today, Linda Luter, that's Lewter. And I'm also on Instagram at Linda Luter LPC.
Absolutely. Again, Miss Linda Luter, licensed professional counselor. Yes. And lastly, Danielle.
I want to go back to our first caller's comment. I think her name was Tennille. Mm-hmm. She spoke about not only being discriminated against in our culture, but in her own family. And that's where it starts. This is where the roots are given. So I want to make sure that we, as family members, realize that this is how we develop our identity in our families, and we have to have a safe place in our families in order to grow and heal and love ourselves.
I love that safe place. If nowhere else,
absolutely,
let's have it there.
We have to be the safe place for our children.
Oh my goodness,
absolutely.
I love that.
I can be reached also on Psychology Today. My first name is spelled Daniall. Last name Foskey, Foskey. I am on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram at holycutie.com.
Absolutely. Again, Danielle Foskey, licensed professional counselor. So we still have another hour to come up after the break, but I just want to be sure that we give you the number, 757-823-9110. This is Hampton Roads Voices. I'm Benita Adams, and this is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. Hampton Roads Voices today. We've had a wonderful conversation so far, and we're going to continue. The skin I'm in is our topic, Black women and skin color. Give us a call, 757-823-9110. What are your experiences in terms of your skin color? Do you feel that colorism still exists in 2019? And we want to know in terms of as we mentioned before, living in a world where people do look at color. 757-823-9110. We have two different guests in our studio now. We have Sherry Phaeton, who is a licensed professional counselor. Sherry, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Benita. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Janice Johnson, who is also a licensed professional counselor. Janice, thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure being here.
Now, Sherry, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Again, my name is Sherry Phaeton. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have a private practice in Chesapeake, and I'm mostly specializing at this particular point with adolescents that are experiencing self-impairment issues, anxiety, depression. I have a lot of young adult women that have gone through various forms of trauma, from emotional to physical abuse, sexual assault, and dealing with also family issues as well.
Very good. And Janice, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, I'm Janice Johnson. I, too, am a licensed professional counselor in the Chesapeake, Virginia area. My specialization is in the area of grief, loss, and trauma. Mm-hmm. I find that 9 out of 10 people that come to counseling, sure, there's depression, sure, there's anxiety, but if we can get to the root cause of things, there's a lot of trauma, and especially a lot of trauma in our community, that with specialized training, specialized treatment, we can actually uproot the trauma that resides in the brain.
Absolutely.
That's my specialization.
That is interesting. Both of those fields, so important. And I could see them being connected actually to what we're talking about tonight, which of course is the skin you're in. So many times, and it was well said during our first hour, that if you're in the privileged group, whatever group you want to think of that as, research is saying that the light skin is the privileged group. you walk around in the world differently. You don't see some of the issues and concerns that perhaps someone else has. I was telling one of our guests during our break that I have one child who is very dark skinned and another child who is brown skinned and another one who's very fair. And this particular daughter, who is the most amazing person. I mean, and she's a plus size. Let me add to that too. She's a plus size person. And I'm telling you, she's articulate and beautiful and has these amazing people skills. And she did a lot of marketing. And once she had an opportunity to work the Taste of Chicago event. And if you know anything about the Taste of Chicago, it is a gigantic event with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And they had asked her to work the beer booth, okay, because a lot of men and a lot of people, they would come to that booth. So when they first hired her for that particular opportunity, gave her that opportunity, the next day they called her and they said, oh, we've changed our mind. We've decided that we're going to put you at some other booth. But they didn't really tell her the reason why. Come to find out, it sounds like my mother, come to find out that they had decided that she was too dark and too large, and they assumed men would not respond to her, and they wouldn't buy any beer. Wow. So they put these white girls, tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls there instead, and said men will buy beer from them. They wouldn't buy beer from you. This is the world in which we live.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is in the 2000s.
Reality.
This is the reality in which we live. And so when we talk about colorism, when we talk about the lighter skinned person versus the darker skinned person, this is real. This isn't something from past days and we say, oh no, it doesn't matter anymore. Tell us your experience in terms of just how you work and live in the world, or some of your past experiences as a fair-skinned person.
I think, from my perspective, I think I became aware of light skin privilege early on in my development, probably in my teens. Wow. As a matter of fact, I remember being hired at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard for the Disadvantaged Youth Program. And we had to stand in line, actually, to be looked at to determine where we were going to work. And I remember holding hands very hard with my girlfriend, who was very dark-skinned and I was very light-skinned. And we were holding hands because we were very afraid as teenagers, and we didn't want to be separated even then. And my best girlfriend got sent to the labor shops just based on the color of her skin. And I got sent to the administrative offices. And I worked with the captain of the shipyard, sat at a desk. Had no more skills than she did, but that was the determining factor. Certainly we didn't have resumes because we were teenagers coming out of high school. And so I knew there was something very different. There was something very wrong about that decision. And coming later, I'm understanding and have understood that it was a skin color issue. That's what it was.
Isn't that an amazing thing that we hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Anything in terms of your experiences?
So I was definitely aware that my skin color mattered as a dark-skinned girl at a very early age, just from very subliminal messages that I would hear, such as, you don't want to stay in the sun too long because you don't want to get too black.
Wow.
Or I've heard from, friends, relatives, about washing their elbows to get the black off.
Wow.
So these very insidious, messages that go on at such early ages that really are not meant in a harmful way, but it really can impact an individual, And I grew up in schools that were predominantly white and would get, you're pretty for a black girl.
Wow.
And I remember hearing that at a very young age and being like, oh, it felt like a compliment. It felt like I should feel good
Was that a
about it.
compliment?
Right, but,
Right.
it started questioning, well, is it a compliment? And just starting to at that particular age, I knew nothing about colorism or discrimination against within my own race, but I knew it didn't feel good. And not until I got to an older age, when I started to process a lot of things about my self-esteem that I was struggling with, that I realized that a lot of the issues that I had towards myself stem back to these messages.
Yes.
That was told to me. And it's almost, I explain to people because, a lot of people think, well, that's the compliment, isn't it? Well, just think about if someone says, you almost won the lottery.
Almost. Wow.
You almost got into Spelman, but not quite.
Not quite.
So I always felt that for a long time, that if my pretty was not good enough or had limitation, then I start to question other areas of my life.
Wow, that is an amazing thing. And we want to hear your experiences. 757-823-9110. I love that Sherry said, the almost. That's almost like a person who's plus size saying, you have a pretty face. That's you have a pretty face,
right?
And you know that there's something else missing,
Yes.
or you have such a great personality. Wow,
It's something incomplete. You feel something that's incomplete.
That's
right.
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So we know that part of this historically, and we've talked about this a little bit, of course, comes from slavery. We talked about the field slave versus the house slave, the lighter skin and darker skin. But what makes this continue even in 2019? What do you think? Why is this still around now?
I still have to think from a brain perspective.
Okay, very good.
The mind is an amazing machine. And if we travel down the same lane in our brain, then we will continue to feel and think the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so if our brain has been conditioned, it's a conditioning thing. If it has been conditioned to believe that a light skin is prettier, is better, or whatever, and we keep traveling down that same path,
right.
Then we're going to have the same results. The question becomes, well, how do you change the
How
brain?
do you change it? Right.
And with the media still being biased in its presentation of African American culture, that brain is still being trained to think a certain way and then believe a certain way, feel a certain way, and act out accordingly. So I have to go to that, and I think that is still the root of the issue. The brain has to be retrained, and that's going to take a lot of work to retrain our brains.
A lot of work. You think about what it takes when you're a child, when you're raising a child, and all the things that you have to put into his or her brain, and then that development, and then that goes into our adolescence, young adulthood, and so forth. That mindset perhaps has been there such a long time that to retrain that is a massive responsibility. Sherry, what do you think? Why is it still happening now?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with Janice stated that that seems to be the origin of how things started, but it's about having these type of conversations that I think that we've all known about colorism and discrimination and things, but we need to be courageous enough
That's right.
to not only have these conversations, but to be able to authentically state our truths in it.
Exactly.
So if we're not able to engage one another and state our experiences or state, even if we're on the side of we've been doing the discrimination.
Yes.
We have to be able to welcome all parties that are involved to have this conversation. I think the more that we have it, the more that we'll be able to start retraining our brains or start identifying different ways of seeing beauty and acceptance and realizing that we're making certain presumptions. I think we've been doing things so much and so long that a lot of times it's not even intentional, right?
That's right.
It's just something that we know, something that's familiar.
And I believe, as you're saying, there has to be some honesty there.
Yes.
Whether you are the person that says, yes, I got all the privileges, or you are the person that says, I didn't like this person or I didn't like this person. There's some honesty in that truth there that perhaps, I know this in the African American community, sometimes, that saying, let's not air our dirty laundry, or we need to keep this to ourselves or so forth. But sometimes it has to go beyond that. We have to grow past that and say, you know what, I need to tell the truth here.
Absolutely.
I need to own this truth.
Yes.
I need to say this out loud so other people can hear me, so that it is so important in order to do that. So again, give us a call, 757-823-9110. What are your experiences? We're talking about the skin I'm in, Black women and skin color. We have here Sherry Phaeton and Janice Johnson. Both are licensed professional counselors. I was reading something that I found very interesting, and we talked about this a little bit in the first hour, and we were saying in terms of entertainment, and we were saying media and those kinds of things, we still see that concept of beauty. We see the same thing. As I was saying, when I was young, you didn't see African Americans on TV. When I was a very little girl, you didn't see that at all. And so we need to see that now there's so many factors that go along with beauty. One of our callers said that she used to wear her hair straight, then she cut it, and she wears a natural. And she said that she believes that she said this very clearly, that men saw her differently, even in the texture of the hair. Now, Sherry, you have locks. Tell us.
They're faux locks, but they're locks.
But they're locks, nonetheless. Right, they look like locks.
Keeping it all the way real here.
Oh, right. Nonetheless, as a darker skinned woman, as a woman who wears a natural hairstyle, tell me how you feel you are perceived with that beautiful look.
My experience has been really very positive.
Wow.
And it's so funny that you asked about my hair, because I wouldn't have worn this hairstyle probably a decade ago. I happen to be my own a business owner, so I get to wear what I want to wear, and be who I want to be. But when I was in corporate America, I was very much aware of the image that I portrayed was going to be how I was judged and how I was viewed. But with the faux locks, I think I went to Jamaica last year and I started thinking about how to wear my hair, and I have not turned back since. And a lot of white individuals, older white, I mean, just all different people have been very receptive of my locks. And tell you the truth, I have felt the most beautiful in my locks. Of all my hairstyles and things, So I've really embraced it, and I think people see when we embrace ourselves, people can feel that.
Absolutely.
As well.
I completely agree with that. So we're going to go to the phones. Caller, you are live on the air. What is your name, please? And where are you calling from? Yes, what is your name, please? You're live.
Yes, I'm T from Virginia Beach.
Okay. T, what is your question or comment, please, for our guests?
I have a comment. I grew up in the Southampton County area, very small area, and I just felt like when I was coming up, it was obviously I felt like it was a lot of racism going on in that area. I'm of a mixed race. My father is African American. My mom is several different mixtures of races, but she could pass for a white woman. And my father, with his good job back then, had a great credit score, making great money. We tried to get on one side of town and buy a nice brick home, and they declined him because of most likely his race. They didn't want blacks in the area.
Wow. And
the story that's been told to, me from my mother, and things like that, you learn colorism real quick when they deny you certain privileges, and you have the capability to do so.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure that's many people's story, knowing that you have, in your case, your parents had, or your father had, the money to buy the home. That was not the issue. And as you say, you very quickly realized what the real issue is, whether or not it was spoken out loud or not.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
And she also went downtown where a lot of white businesses are owned, and my father dropped her off. And they had a white server. When she said, okay, I'll show you up to the restaurant. And when my father came in, they quickly got a black waitress to wait on both of them. And it's very sad because, everybody's money is green.
Yes, it is.
I mean, and so it's like you're going to deny that person, and get somebody. It doesn't make sense. But I feel like I was really accepted when I went to Florida. And I just had a revelation almost, because I felt so accepted as being a mixed child. there because it was so many different races.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt so comfortable when I went to Florida, you know. But I'm in customer service, and I try to give my customers the best service, and they appreciate that. And it's all about a person's personality and, you know, how they are on the inside. That's what makes them beautiful.
Their character. T, thank you so much for calling. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
We have another caller on the line. Caller, you are live on the air. What is your name, please, and where are you calling from?
My name is Robin, and I'm calling from Hampton.
Okay, Robin, what is your question or comment? Thank you for calling.
Oh, no problem. It's actually a comment, just a two-part comment, but I know that you were talking about earlier what we could do to solve the problem maybe, and
Yes.
I think your point about having an open dialogue is very important. I know sometimes when I'm trying to talk to people about the experiences I have being dark-skinned and the experiences that have affected me, they say, oh, well, things are different now. I don't know why we're talking about that because there's bigger things that we can talk about in our community. And I think we have to recognize that it's a problem first and foremost so that we can solve it.
Yes, for sure.
And then also the double-handed compliments, too. Like a person will tell you you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl, and being dark-skinned is not a debilitating condition. If I'm pretty, I'm pretty.
Right.
You know, it's not like I'm pretty to be dark-skinned.
Right.
And I think
In
that
spite
can
of.
issue
It's
too.
almost like, in spite of, look at you. You can still be pretty and dark. Wow.
Exactly, exactly. So those are just two things that have been my experience. And I think that, you know, if we try to work towards acknowledging the problem, having open discussions, that'll be a big step in changing things.
I love your comments. Robin, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Sherry, what do you think about what Robin said, the open dialogue and also the two-handed or almost backhanded compliment?
Oh, that is, I think she nailed it.
Yes, she did.
She nailed it. Because that's what it makes you feel like. It makes you feel when someone is saying that you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl or you're pretty for a curvy girl or whatever the case may be. It feels as though that you have some type of thing that you have overcome, you know, and so, and definitely her part about the open conversation, or open dialogue, and specifically what she was talking about, having these conversations and being willing to listen. Right. Not listen just to make your point, but listen to try to understand another person's perspective, another person's experience. I think it's so important.
I agree with that.
This conversation.
Instead of saying, oh, we've already talked about that year after year, generation after generation. No, absolutely not. The conversation still needs to be had.
Absolutely.
It is so important. So we're going to go to a break, 757-823-9110. We want to hear from you. Have you had those backhanded compliments? Have you been in a situation where maybe one of your parents is of one race, one is of another race, as our caller T told us about her experiences? We want to hear from you. 757-823-9110. This is Hampton Roads Voices, and this is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Thanks for joining us today. Today we're talking about the skin I'm in, black women and skin color. And we have two licensed professional counselors with us today, Sherry Phaeton and Janice Johnson. Now, ladies, we were saying something very interesting during the break. And Janice, you started this conversation, but we had talked about quite a bit about how African American men really see this notion of colorism. But you mentioned, let's not forget ourselves and women. Talk about that a little bit. How do we perpetuate this notion of colorism?
Yes, I was just thinking that we do put a lot on our African American men and their choices and selections, and we know where that that way of thinking and way of being has come from. But as women, we bought into it as well. Or some of us, of course, we're speaking generally now, but we bought into it as well. And so how do we buy into it? Okay, so we do a lot of posting on social media. And as we post on social media, I've noticed that we tend to need to be lighter and lighter and lighter. Why do we need to be lighter and lighter? What is wrong with our natural skin tone? Somehow we're sending the message that my natural skin tone is not okay, that there is something wrong with it. Maybe it is not as pretty. the perception is not as pretty. Or we have to get our hair longer and longer and straighter and straighter and longer and longer and straighter and straighter. Now, what is that really all about? If we're not feeding into colorism,
Right.
as if longer, straighter hair is prettier. And so we have to take some onus for that as African American women and really challenge ourselves in terms of how we are perceiving our own personal beauty apart from what others have imposed upon us. How are we feeding that mantra? And if we are feeding into it, then we have some responsibility to do that rewiring of the brain and being very honest about, where we are personally, as opposed to saying, well, I can just do whatever I want to. Yeah, you can. But why are you? What is behind the reason?
The reason.
The
Right.
reason. And that transparency and that honesty is very important. So that's just what I was kind of going through my mind when I was thinking that.
I find that so fascinating, and we're actually going to do an entire show about hair, black women and hair. But it is interesting that you say that. Sherry, you were talking about, and you were saying that you wear faux locks now, and you went to Jamaica and realized that. And so I come from a background of television news. That's where I come from. And so the way I wear my hair now is very different than I wore it on TV because it was a standard of beauty. I did wear my hair straight and curled, but you know how much time it took? First of all, it took me so long to get dressed. But there is a reason. Natural hair is beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with wearing your wigs or your weaves or your straight hair or anything like that. But I do find it interesting that you just know why we see it and see what we do and why we do it that way. And I find that fascinating. Also, when I was preparing for today, listen to this, ladies. It says, here are some of the 5 most common lies you need to unbelieve. Listen to this. Number 1, dark-skinned women don't need sunscreen because of the melanin in our skin. Myth. That's a myth. Number 2, no skin cancer ever gets to dark-skinned people. That's a myth. Number 3, nude beauty products don't work for dark skin. Number 4, anti-aging is optional for dark skin. I don't know where that came from. And here's the one we were laughing about. You should never wear red lipstick
Right. God
if
forbid.
you are dark skinned. Now, callers, come on. I know you have heard that before. When I was growing up, that if you're dark, don't wear red lipstick because that won't even look good. Okay. Besides hearing the word ashy, I don't know which one I heard the most. But that is so important. So Sherry, you mentioned also kind of an aside that you thought that too, but you found some MAC lipstick and you realized that red looked good on you.
Oh, it is amazing. It's amazing. But it was so funny when I was hearing you and Janice talk, and that you heard that specifically. I can't ever remember hearing it, but I can remember thinking that I would not look good in a red lipstick. So somehow, whether it was through some hidden messages or some maybe conversation that I heard, I took on that message,
Right.
And so a lot of things, when we really begin to think about it, that we adapt as our own. We adapt as, okay, this is what we shouldn't do. This is what we should do. But it's really not our own when we start to really break down certain things. These are things or stories that maybe people have told to us.
That's right.
That we have taken on our own. So I'm learning how to sort of break down, go through my book and really breaking down which stories are truly about me.
That's right.
And what stories were told to me that really doesn't serve me well anymore.
That's right.
Yes.
And it's been a process.
And that is so true, that what does not serve you well. So how do we teach our girls? How do we teach our girls that by the time they get our age, they don't have to believe these myths? They can change the narrative. They can change their own story. But we've got to start when they're young.
Yes.
How do we teach our girls?
It's just what you said. We have to talk. We have to constantly teach them that they are beautiful. We have to say it. We have to say it a lot. I think we have to oversay it. Even if it feels like, this is overkill. Well, I think the overkill is worth the benefit.
That's right.
They walk away confident. I see in my practice a lot of young girls, college age. Parents have raised them, given them the best advantages because that's what they wanted for their children. So what did they do? They raised them in integrated, primarily white neighborhoods. They go into primarily white schools. They go to primarily white universities, and they come to me broken.
Wow.
They come to me broken because they did not get the message that they were beautiful at home, in their neighborhood, in their schools, in their colleges. And all they have been trying to do is assimilate and be like. And the message has always been, well, you are different.
You are different.
You are different. You don't belong. You are very different. And they come with all these degrees, masters and PhDs now, young people, you know, in their early 20s, 25, 27. I think that's early, right?
It is.
And so they've gotten all the education and they've gotten the positions, and they're very broken and they're very unhappy. And it boils down to self-esteem, sense of self-worth, only because I don't belong based on what I look like.
What I look
and
like.
And so as women, black women, black men, we have to constantly tell our girls, tell our boys that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, and they are gorgeous in every respect. And your skin is just amazingly, you know? I just love the smoothness and the richness of your skin. Look at this.
That's right.
And we get excited about it.
And we get excited about it.
We do. And I want to take what Janice is saying a step further. Not only do they need to hear us say it, we need to show them. We need to demonstrate.
I love it.
What T, I believe the caller earlier was named T.
Yes.
And she stated when she went to Florida and saw people like her.
Oh, my goodness.
She began to feel accepted. And we have to be able to, as parents, as women, as aunties, as uncles, fathers, to show our children what beauty looks like. And it's not just one complexion. It's not one height. It's not one texture of hair. It is all multiple things, right?
Yes.
And so until we show them, and we talked about how the images are lacking in the media. There, of course, have come a long ways, but we're still lacking. And so if the television is not showing them, we need to take them to the places to show them and have those conversations, you know. And I think that a lot of times we will say certain things. Oh, you're beautiful, but yet don't stay too long in the sun. Well, you're saying, I'm confused.
Right.
Yes.
That's a mixed message.
Am I beautiful?
Right.
Like I am?
Yes.
Because really when we're talking about our skin complexion, things that God has given us, these are things that are beyond our control.
They are.
And so even on a spiritual level, you're not just criticizing that individual. You are critical for those people that are believers and that are faith. You're criticizing your creator.
Wow.
His design.
Yes.
You know, and so until we're able to have those conversations and to show our children, not just in our words, but to show them, you know, in our communities, taking them to the various schools where there's diversity, taking them to the various plays and museums, this different representations of who we are.
Who we are.
That's when things will start to shift.
And that is true with not only what we, they're taught, but what I like to say, what they're caught. What we catch, not just with words, but by actions.
Yes.
Saying that I remember when I was young and, I was in high school at the time, and it was time to decide on a college. And I wanted to go to bless my parents, and they're wonderful people, but I wanted to go to an HBCU. And my parents said, you're not going to learn anything at a black school. We're not paying for that. So you either go to this school, which is a white school, or you're not going to college. I picked the white school because I wanted to go to college.
Sure.
But you see that mindset.
Yes.
Do you see that mindset? I grew up in a time where white was right, no matter what. And my parents would say, okay, I remember even recently, it was a matter of months ago, and my mom, the little 3-year-old, my 3-year-old, and she said, does the babysitter that he goes to, does she whispered, does she keep white children? I said, yeah, Mom. Oh, then that's fine. Then that's good. Do you see that? If I said, no, all black kids, no, she would have said, you need to take him out of that little black daycare and put him with some white folks because that's better. And that's the mindset that we catch. We're taught it, not just by these are the words, but by the actions.
Yes.
And so those are the things that we keep in our brains and we teach. And that's why I asked the question, how do we specifically teach our girls and our boys, as you said, that they are beautiful and they are valuable, that white is not right necessarily. It's just another way. But our way is just as beautiful and just as valuable and just as right. I always tell people, you are enough.
Yes.
You are enough, just like you said. You are enough just the way you are.
Yes.
And we've got to tell our children that. Because if we don't, the others will not.
They'll get another story.
They'll get another story. So we want to take a break now, but we want to hear from you, 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. If you are around young children, tell us, how do you teach your children that they are beautiful just the way they are? This is Hot 91.
Is Hampton Roads Voices. Hot 91.
Welcome back, everybody. Today on Hampton Roads Voices, in honor of Women's History Month, we're talking about Black women and skin color. We're calling it The Skin I'm In. And in studio, we have two guest experts, Sherry Phaeton and Janice Johnson. Both ladies are licensed professional counselors. So, ladies, we've talked a lot about just various aspects, but I want to look at this statistic. It called it an enduring legacy. It says, in Black America, those with light skin received employment opportunities off limits to darker skinned people. It also talks about how not just in employment, but in opportunities such as loans, in terms of housing, and you had mentioned that before, in terms of education. And we think, oh my gosh, all of that because of the color of a person's skin.
Yes.
And you had mentioned that, Janice, as well, when you were talking about the experience that you have. And some of the young women that you see in your practice, have they mentioned anything like that? What are some of the aspects of colorism that might be affecting their lives? You say that they're highly educated women.
Highly educated, very, very smart, very polished. But very sad.
Wow.
Only because, not so much with opportunities, because what they've expressed is that they've had opportunities. Doors have been opened, not shut because of their color. But it's more of a perception of being accepted.
Yes.
In the greater community, the greater culture, and realizing that, no, you really are not accepted. It's like a light bulb has gone off.
Right.
That they're really hurt because they're finding themselves, somewhat isolated and somewhat separated.
Right.
And not being the friend that they thought they were in the greater community that they were raised in, that they went to school, the people that they went to school with. And they're just broken that I'm realizing that that's where my injury came from. My injury came early on, even as a child, not being able to play and be really a part of the group within my neighborhood. And then it just kind of piled on as they went into school and they went into college, and they still were trying to battle, it seemed like, to belong, just to belong, and coming to the realization that, okay, you really don't belong.
Wow.
They're coming to that realization, and that's very hurtful and very demeaning. But in terms of employment, I haven't seen many or heard many talk about it from that perspective.
Right, exactly.
But from my own perspective, I clearly remember knowing how to put on my white voice.
Wow.
I knew how to turn that white voice on in interviews quickly. I knew how to make my white interviewers get over me, get over my color. I knew I had to do that, and I had to do it quickly because you needed to listen to me.
Yes.
And so I knew how to turn that on. I knew all about, light skin privilege. I used it. I used it because I knew I had it.
Right.
And I knew that I was less threatening than my Black sister counterparts. I knew that. I knew that, I was more accepted. And I used it. I thought I was using it as a springboard. So, it's like one helped the other.
Right.
And so moving up in the career field in leadership, it was always my endeavor that, okay, now you're here, and you're here because you're light. This is why you're here. You're smart. You're not going to take that away from me, but you're also here because you got a little edge.
How did that make you feel when you realized it and you used that advantage over your darker skinned sisters?
I didn't know if I was using it as an advantage.
Okay.
I knew it was an advantage.
Okay. You knew it was an advantage.
I knew it was an advantage. And so I'm a realist. And so I live in a real world. And I felt like, okay, well, this is the life that you're in. This is the world that you live in. And that part you can't change. But what you can change is once you get in there, then, okay, this is your opportunity to help, your brother or sister that may be being discriminated because they're darker, and that's why you are the reason why you're here, not to continue to perpetuate colorism within your own community.
Absolutely.
So I just think it was very real for me because I knew that there was an advantage. I remember even growing up as a child, we were the light-skinned family on the corner. All those light-skinned people down there.
Those people down there.
Right. right. But, and you got all these messages, and it seemed offensive to me, in a real way. And I remember even my sisters who were looking like me, it was always an endeavor to find a black man.
Wow.
Get a dark man.
Get a dark man because you don't want these pale looking children. So find you a dark man. Some of us did and some of us did not. So that, but all these innuendos and kind of subtle messages were really out there. So we just got to know that we live in a real world. We have to teach our children again that they live in a real world. In a real world.
It can't be Pollyannish. And I think we shield them sometimes too much from what may hit them later on unexpectedly.
I love that. Respond to that, Sherry. Do we coddle our children too much? African American children, do we not let them know what's going to happen once they leave mommy, daddy, grandma, auntie out there in the real world?
Yeah, I think I couldn't speak for all, of course, African American families. I think that probably would be the case for some where I think we all have a desire for our children to have better than we had. And from that good intent, sometimes we can shield them and protect them in ways that will not benefit them beyond your house. So going back to the conversation that we had earlier, I do believe that whatever topic that we have identified that's going to benefit our children, that's going to prepare them for the world, prepare them how they see themselves and how they see themselves fitting into the world, we need to have honest conversations with them. I think a lot of times people think, well, if I talk about a certain thing, if they weren't thinking about it first, now they're going to be thinking about it and am I going to harm them? And that really is not the case. People desire authenticity. Authenticity. I'm going to get that word right before I leave. Being real, being true to yourself. And so I think children can respect parents when they're having honest conversations, even if the conversation is hard or tough, to have an honest conversation with them. Because not to have that conversation with them and try to keep them from things that's going to help them beyond your walls at home is not doing them any good.
No.
And we know that this, and we mentioned this a little bit as well, we know that this concept, this discrimination, I do want to call it what it is, goes beyond our homes into the school system with teachers, with counselors, with administrators and so forth. And we know that this conversation and this thinking and looking at it differently, we absolutely have to know that these conversations need to be in the school system with teachers who are teaching our children. What would you say to an educator? What would you say to them, Janice?
Oh, I do too believe in transparency and honesty. And I think educators come from the same community and the larger community that's there. And
Absolutely.
They have to teach, teach. That's what you're there to do, and you have to teach the truth. And so bringing that level of transparency and honesty to their students is part of the teaching process.
It is.
And to not address those issues, not to, have a little black girl come up and she wants to know why I can't get in this group because they told me that I was too dark. Now we have a teachable moment.
Right.
And teachers and educators have, to me, a responsibility to seize upon that, to bring about a change and a different perspective and a different level of understanding to that child. Altogether. So we just have to do what we are there to do, and that is to impart, but impart based on lifting these kids up and to help them with their self-esteem.
Absolutely. I remember reading a story once about a young girl who wanted to be for Halloween one of the Disney princesses. I don't remember which one, but it wasn't a brown one, it was a white one. And her teacher told her, but you can't be that Disney princess because she's white and you're not. Can you imagine what that did to her heart? Can you imagine what that did to her self-esteem? And so it's those kinds of things that we need to begin again to change that conversation.
Absolutely.
Because that child could possibly grow up thinking, I have limitations. Some limitations are real and some are made. And that is so important.
It is. Absolutely.
Sherry, what do you think about that?
Our perception is our reality, right?
Yes, it is.
And so these words that we're hearing, even as children, they definitely have an impact. You know, Janice was talking about even some of her clients that she works with, maybe not having challenges with being in certain positions or having certain opportunities, but they're broken inside. And I can identify with that because I was one of those individuals.
Wow.
I tell people I could do confidence very well.
Wow.
I could talk the talk, I could walk the walk, I had the posture, I could articulate, but I was very, very much broken inside. So my inside did not match the outside, the confidence that I was exuding because of so many things that I had internalized that I was not good enough. Even though in school I seemed to excel, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep and marketing consultant, a lot of public positions that I exuded this confidence. I exuded someone that you would think that I thought I was beautiful and that I had it going on, but my inside was very broken.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What did it take to heal the brokenness?
I really had to be around other individuals really that could own their narrative.
Wow.
I was afraid to tell my true story. I was afraid to admit to people that I wasn't as confident as I portrayed. And so therefore it kept me perpetuating this image that I could again do it, but I never felt it. And so hearing other women with similar stories or struggles, and even if their struggle was not similar to mine, being honest what they were going through.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what I'm saying. These conversations are so important.
They are.
To us. I'm a part of a organization called Real Women. And Real Women is simply a safe place for women to do real work on themselves. It's a very safe environment. And so seeing these individuals that were in all types of positions, from deans of universities to doctors and attorneys, and then we'll sit in the circle and we would talk about our brokenness.
Wow.
And so I had never experienced that before. But that gave me permission to start the work that I had always been scared of, because I felt that I could not. I call it the this and that. I would own my this, the things that I felt that was very good about myself, but that I didn't want any parts of that.
I'm not even going to touch that one. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the good stuff. Well, ladies, we only have a few minutes left, and so Janice, what would you say to the person listening? Give us some last nuggets and last pieces here.
I just would say, just own who you are. Figure out how to own your own identity and yourself as a woman. You really have to do the work on yourself to validate yourself. Do a lot of inward searching on how to do that internal validation. Learn how to figure out how do I release myself from external affirmation. And bring in that internal affirmation.
Wow.
And I would say, like Sherry was sharing, it's important to get around powerful women that own themselves.
That's right.
Get in line with them. If you don't have anyone, find them. Do the legwork, do the research, invest in yourself that way. so that you know that no matter what your skin color looks like, no matter what your hair texture is, no matter what your body size is, you change what you want to change, but you're changing it for the reason that uplifts you and not so much that you are trying to be like this one and like that one so that you can get this external affirmation. Affirmation really has to come internally and for it to be eternal. It has to come internally for it to be eternal.
Oh, my. Well said.
I would just encourage them to try to do that.
Sherry.
Yeah, just starting with ourselves and sort of going back what we were talking about before, starting with ourselves and asking ourselves, what are we doing? What are we saying that may be perpetuating, these stories that we have been hearing for so long, that we've been telling individuals? We have to start with our own truths, right? And I think goes along what Janice says. And when we start there, we're able to engage other in an honest conversation as well. So we need to have more conversations like that. It doesn't have to be in a radio station. It could be at your kitchen table. It can be in the mall. It could be, at church. It could be wherever. But having these conversations, because this thing does exist.
Yes.
Right? So it's almost like the pink elephant in the room. We know that the pink elephant in the room exists.
Yes.
What are we going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Amazing. Janice, contact information. How can they find you?
They can find me on Psychology Today, Janice R. Johnson, LPC. On Psychology Today, they can either contact me at my office on 410-0072.
Absolutely. And Sherry, how can they find you?
You can also find me on Psychology Today, and I'm under Sherry A. Phaeton, LPC, NCC, or on Facebook. And as well, you can contact me at my office at 757-410-0072.
Again, you've just heard from Sherry Phaeton and Janice Johnson. Both are licensed professional counselors. Ladies, it's been such a privilege to have you here in the studio today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
And it's been great having you as well. And remember, we are here every Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. Today we were talking about the skin I'm in, Black women and skin color. And all this month we will be talking about issues that are pertaining to Women for Women's History Month. So don't, again, forget to email me. Let me know what you want to talk about. My email address is bkadams@nsu.edu. Also, you can find us on social media. That is at Hot91 Online. You can find us on Instagram, on Twitter, and also on Facebook. And again, my email address is bkadams@nsu.edu. Also, don't forget that we rebroadcast the show every Sunday, 12 noon to 2 p.m. And don't forget that also on our YouTube channel, you can hear this over and over again. It's been such a pleasure being with you today. We'll see you next week. Have a good evening. The views and opinions expressed on this program are not those of Norfolk State University or WNSB FM. Thank you for listening.